Hi, everyone. Miss Melinda here, your spiritual worker from Miss Melinda's MetaphysicalServices.com, here to bring us our weekly live spirit chat, which is a chance for you to participate in a live group coaching session and get your questions answered pertaining to developing your spiritual path, developing your spiritual connection, developing your spiritual path and practice, and all kinds of things related and in between. And as some of you know, these spirit chats happen. They happen once a week, usually on the weekends, but not always. The day of the week is not set, but they're always at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. They happen on YouTube and they happen on Instagram. I schedule them on YouTube so you can always see when it's going to happen, and I announce them at least a couple of days in advance on Instagram so that you have a heads up. So for these chats, I typically take some early bird submissions, and then I address those early bird questions at the beginning of our chat. So that's what I'm going to do today. And I have some interesting submissions and a couple of things that I might elaborate on, maybe even a little bit more than usual. But I do think that I will have time to take your live questions at the end of the early bird questions. So I'm looking forward to those. If you have those, you can go ahead and throw them out now and I will attend to them later. Or you can wait and throw them out when the time is right. Thanks so much for joining, everyone. Let me take a moment to say hi to some people. JC Moji is here. Thank you. Nice to see you. I think some new faces are here. Thanks for joining, everyone. Joanna Joycito is here. Thank you for joining. Queen of Darkness, perhaps new. Channel Current, I'm not sure, or Chanel maybe. I'm not sure if you're new or not. Sober Soul, thanks so much, everybody, for being here. Okay, I'm just going to take a moment to settle in. I just splashed some Florida water on as we were beginning to record. I'm going to take a sip of my iced tea, and then I'm going to start jumping into these early bird questions. It's a giant thing of iced tea. It's mostly ice. Thank you for being here, Mellow Yellow. Nice to see you. So the first question that I'm going to address is something that is on a lot of people's minds right now. And the question is, what magic tools can we use to help with social justice for women at this time? So first of all, I want to say that I am going to address this question, obviously, from my perspective, from within the context of the kind of spiritual practice that I have and the kind of magic that I work. So this is not going to be the end all be all only answer that there is out there, but this is just going to offer some information from my perspective and from the perspective of my personal path and my spiritual work. And then the next thing that I want to say is that there's definitely a place for action in the world. There's definitely a place for speaking out. There's definitely a place for expressing yourself, even if that means expressing your anger. I always recommend that we have to accept our emotions in order to accept anything. And we have to have self-love in order to have love in the world. And the first step of self-love is to accept yourself exactly the way that you are. And that means to accept your emotions, to accept how you feel. And I don't want us to forget that in order to work towards social justice, we also have to take care of ourselves. And that means that we have to take care of our healing as well. One of the reasons that I don't speak a lot about politics specifically or directly is because I feel as if all of this spiritual work, witchcraft, magic, all of it, it is political. It is political. When we're making a difference within ourselves, we are making a difference within the world. When we're helping to heal others, when we're empowering ourselves and we're empowering others, we are making a difference in the world. If you want to heal the world, you have to heal yourself. So please, in this work, don't forget the work that is needed for yourself. Don't forget to attend to your healing, so that we can continue to work to heal the world. And when accepting our emotions in order to attend to our healing, take note of where anger comes from. Anger comes from sadness. It comes from persecution. It comes from oppression. It comes from a feeling of being misunderstood. It comes from fear. So don't forget to attend to those aspects of your feelings, even in this world stage, even in this climate of social injustice that we are currently experiencing. Now I'm going to make a brief note of my personal perception of what is going on politically before I move on to addressing the question more directly and offering some magical and spiritual tools to assist with social justice in general, and also specifically for women in general. One of the things that I want to make a note of is that we cannot give in to the fear. We cannot fight fire with fire. We can't fight hate with hate. So we have to be careful of that. And we can't give into the fear. There's a lot of fear mongering in the media. There's a lot of propaganda in the media. There's a lot of kind of testing the waters of our social structure to see what we will and will not put up with. And also propaganda is used for the purposes of inciting fear, because fear is a powerful tool to control the masses. So be careful about the information and the images that are put out there and how they are being used. I think that's all I have to say about that. I just feel that there is a minority of people who are very loud, and it's important to remember that they are a minority. They are not the majority. Unfortunately, they tend to be in positions of power, but don't forget that they're not the majority. I think that there's a lot of information being thrown out there right now that is kind of just to test the people, to see how we will react, what we will and will not put up with, and also for the purposes of further conquering and dividing. Be careful of divisiveness. If we are further divided, we are more easily conquered. If we are further fearful, further angered, further off balance to the point where we're not able to be productive services and we're not productive individuals and we're not able to do healthy, loving, productive things in the world, then they will win. So these are some of the important things that we have to be aware of, right? So take care of yourself. Just some things to think over. So let's get to what magic tools can we use to help with social justice right now for women. I would recommend tapping into and working with dark goddess energies. And many of the dark goddesses are associated with social justice for women, and they are associated with justice in general, and they are associated with protection for women and women's issues, generally speaking. So one of my favorites would be Hecate or Hecate, however you would like to pronounce her name. She was both Greek and Roman. She has a multifaceted, multi-layered history. Part of her beauty is that a lot of her history is shrouded in mystery. There are some people who claim to be experts on her, but it's nearly impossible since most of her history has been erased. The reason that she has different pronunciations for her name is because she comes from those different cultures and persisted for a long time in separate areas of the world. So Hecate is very much interested in justice for women. She's very much interested in protecting women, and she carries with her that dark goddess energy. What does it mean to have dark goddess energy? It means that she's fierce. It means that she's not afraid to take swift action. It means that she's not afraid to delve into the shadows. It means that she will help us with the difficult stuff within ourselves and within the world. She is a great protector of witches, a great protector of women and of mothers, and very much interested in setting the balance right. Okay, so she would be one of my go-tos. Another one of my go-tos would be Kali. Kali is known as the Great Destroyer. She gets a bad rap because she's known as a destroyer. But when you really know about Kali, what is it that she destroys? She destroys evil. She destroys the enemies of the people who need to be protected. She is somebody who stands up for the rights of the oppressed. She's somebody who stands up for the rights of the poor. She's somebody who's interested in social justice. So Kali would be an excellent dark goddess to tune into for social justice for women and social justice for everyone at this time. She is the great destroyer and the great creator all at the same time. She's going to dance into death that which needs to be destroyed, and in order to bring new life and bring rebirth into our worlds, in order to refresh and revive us. That is just the kind of energy that we need. Out with the old and in with the new. I would certainly recommend working with her. I also, in my practice, I work with saints, as many of you know, and I don't work with them in the way of synchronizing them with other spirits. I work with them as individual, unique entities onto themselves. And there are several saints that I would recommend working with for social justice, and also just loosely related to this topic. So first of all, as far as personal healing for women especially, but for anybody is concerned, and as far as supporting your mental health, right? So when I'm talking about be sure that you take care of yourself during times like this, and especially if you are going to be using your voice or using your place of privilege or using your power, using yourself to assist with social justice, it's important that you take care of your mental health as one aspect of that self-care. And Saint Dymphna is an excellent support for mental health. She is also an excellent support for female trauma, for rape victims, for incest survivors, and for traumatic things that women go through in general, abuse, all kinds of abuse. So she would be an excellent one to assist with keeping your mental health in check, and also to assist with healing from any of these wounds that may arise within you or that may need reattending to during these triggering times, during these times. So Saint Rita is another one. Saint Rita was oppressed. Saint Rita was forced to be married and have children. She had her first child at 12. She wanted to be a nun, and she was forced to get married and to have children. She had her first child at 12. Very, very tragic story. She was then turned away by the Catholic. Her whole family died. She had 2 sons and a husband. She was basically a captive in this situation. She had no choices. It turned out that all of her family died before she was 30. The whole story is just kind of one of those tragic, people are sending me messages, like text messages, and things are popping up on my screen, and it's making me lose my train of thought. So this is just one of those tragic occurrences where it's like tragedy begets tragedy. And her whole family ended up dying before she was 30. And then she wanted to go and join the nunnery. Finally, after all, she was like, let me live out my lifelong dream. Now that I was forced to get married, have children, do all of this stuff. Now my children are dead. Everyone is dead. I just want to be a nun like I wanted to be in the first place. Well, she then was subjected to a lot of persecution from the church and from the nuns because she wasn't a virgin. Eventually, she was accepted as a nun, but was mistreated very severely and was basically mentally unhealthy all of her life because of everything that she was subjected to. So the thing about saints is that when we're working with them, it's a different kind of energy than when we are working with deities or goddesses or what have you. I think that many people misinterpret the kind of power that saints have to offer, the kind of power that they contain within themselves, and the kind of assistance or energy that they have to offer. Because it may be easy for you to look at her life and say, how could she help me? She wasn't able to stand up for herself. She wasn't able to achieve what she wanted in her life. It's a tragic story. Why would I ask for help from somebody who has had such a tragic story and was a victim? So the way that we believe about this is she learned from those lessons, and she is now an elevated spirit. She's now an elevated spirit because she has passed on, and because of the lessons that she endured in her life, because of the things that she has learned, and because of the spiritual evolution that she has gone through and is now going through, she is inclined to help people with similar circumstances or in matters that are related to the things that she went through. So it's because of her experience that she is qualified to assist us. Saint Joan of Arc is a huge fighter for justice, a fighter for truth in spirituality and spiritual belief and spiritual practice, a fighter for courage in women. She is a remover of blockages and obstacles, a remover of curses. She is somebody who instills courage and brings to light the truth. And she is very much a spirit who is aligned with female empowerment. So that is another one that I would recommend working with or petitioning to or praying to for social justice during this time. Something else that I have been contemplating and that has just kind of come to me recently is the idea of doing some inner work where we envision our inner dark goddess, right? So the way that this came to me is I was contemplating the archetypes of the tarot, and I was contemplating the emperor as a patriarch, as a representation of the patriarchy. And I was thinking about how these archetypes they're not just one thing. The cards are archetypes of our psyches, and they are archetypes, therefore, of our worlds. It is our psyches that create this world. We can only see this world through our own psyches. So the cards, they all have a sun and a moon side, a light and a shadow side, right? A female and a masculine side, however you want to look at it. They all have their multifaceted. And these archetypes in our world are multifaceted as well. And the patriarch, he doesn't have to be an evil tyrant. He doesn't have to be a dominator, a manipulator, an oppressor. He is also a kind and nurturing father. He is also somebody who is stable, somebody who offers us love, somebody who offers us solidity, someone who offers us comfort and security and protection. So I was thinking about doing some inner work in which we do either some journaling or some visualization or some actual spirit journey to go and communicate with these archetypes. You could do a spirit journey when you are asleep. You could do it in dream work. You could do it consciously in meditation. You could do a shamanic journey. You could do a guided meditation. You could do this on the astral plane. There are a lot of different ways you could do this, but the premise is go and speak with those aspects of your psyche, your dark goddess and your emperor or your patriarch. Have them meet each other. Have them open up a communication, a correspondence with each other. Begin a relationship between them because they're both ill. These archetypes in our world are both ill. We tend to focus on the fact that the goddess is sick. The goddess is sick. She is ill in this climate. That's true. Our patriarch is ill as well, and there is an imbalance between the two. We can start to work on regaining this balance and healing this relationship by starting within ourselves. So I recommend one of those exercises that I have mentioned to begin a dialogue between our inner dark goddess and our inner patriarch, or our inner emperor, or our inner father and our inner mother, however you prefer to see it, and to begin to heal that relationship, open a dialogue between them, ask them what they need of each other, how they can help each other, how they can mend, why they are hurting, why they're acting out the way that they are. They're acting out the way that they are because they're hurting. So let's get down to that wound, and let's get down to the healing that we can take power over within this relationship and within this energetic imbalance. So those are some ideas I have for how we can work spiritually, magically, energetically, emotionally to assist with social justice for women and social justice in general at this time. I have a few more questions to address. One question that I got recently is, I'm interested from learning from you, but I'm a Christian. Is this diversity a problem for you? Absolutely not. Diversity of this nature is not a problem for me. The way that I teach in my mentorship and in my coaching and in general is from a non-secular perspective. Yes, I am a spiritual person. Yes, I have my own spiritual path. And it's true that I am not a Christian. However, I teach from a non-secular perspective, and I very much emphasize that my clients, my friends, and everybody needs to be doing what works best for them and what feels right for them. So I always emphasize that magic and spirituality, it is a practice. It is not a religion. The religion or the spiritual beliefs that you choose are unique to you. The tools that I give you, the foundations that I give you, and the things that I assist you with can be applied to any religion or any spiritual practice, or they can be done without a religion or without a spiritual belief or a spiritual practice. So I am very much coming from a non-secular perspective. I do aim to offer you material and tools and information that is useful and that can be applied to your life in the way that is most meaningful and that works best for you. And diversity is not a problem for me. I am open to people of all religions, all paths of life, and all kinds of belief systems. The next question is, where do you keep a souring jar? Will it harbor negative energy in your home? So a couple of things with that. First of all, when we are performing magic, the intention is to send that magic out into the world to the target or to the energetic force that is going to affect the change or the need or the goal that we are seeking. The idea is not that you perform the magic and then the energy stays in your space or around you. The idea is that that energy that you raise and that you direct and you send that out into the world, or you send that to the universe, you send that to spirit, you send that wherever it needs to go so that it can then affect the energy surrounding your situation and start to create a domino effect in the world. So it shouldn't be just sticking right with you and staying in your home. That being said, when we practice any kind of magic, especially magic that has to do with banishing or protection or anything else heavy-handed. Sometimes we need that heavy-handed energy. Sometimes we need defensive magic. Sometimes we need binding or protecting, right? When we practice those kinds of things particularly, but with all magic in general, it's important to have protection and it's important to have purification or cleansings. So you need to have those foundational things in place. Always cleanse yourself and always protect yourself. If you are not familiar with protecting or cleansing yourself, then I suggest that you do some research about that, or I suggest that you book a mentoring session in which you can learn some of those foundational techniques. If you book a session like that with me, it's only going to take us 2 or 3 sessions tops to teach you those kinds of foundational techniques. This is not going to be a situation where I just verbally give you information from a mental perspective. This is going to be a session where we actually walk through practices together, hands-on. You practice it with me. You actually learn how to do this. 2 or 3 sessions, you would be done. At any rate, I recommend that you learn protecting and purification or cleansing if you are going to be performing this kind of magic and you are concerned about harboring negative energy, or you are not familiar with those foundational techniques which are important to protect you. Now, that being said, I do practice with souring jars, and I keep them in my home, and they do not harbor negative energy. They do not affect the energy here. As I mentioned, I do perform a lot of protection and purification and cleansings as well. That's just a normal part of my routine. But I keep the souring jars on the floor underneath my altar. I keep them right on my altar for as long as I am working with them. I usually burn 7 candles in conjunction with a souring jar, and I keep them around for 9 weeks. So after those 7 candles are burned, and for the remainder of those 9 weeks, after the 7 candles are burned, it is removed from my altar. But all during that time, it's kept on my altar, and it doesn't affect anything else negatively. It's contained. It's within itself, and the energy is going out. It's not just staying here. And then after those 7 candles are burned, and for the remainder of 9 weeks, the jar is removed from my altar, and it's placed on the floor underneath my altar where I continue to work it. There are a lot of other ways that you can store a souring jar. A lot of people recommend different things. Some people store a jar like that behind your toilet. Some people very specifically, very literally, and very directly store a jar like that in a place that is associated with that kind of energy and associated with the kind of energy that you are needing to channel for this kind of work. So there are people who store a jar like this behind the toilet. There are people who recommend storing jars like this in the bathroom. There are people who would recommend putting it like back in the back of a dark cupboard where you're not going to see it. So there's a lot of things that are kind of symbolic that you may consider doing for yourself. As I said, I don't do any of that. What I don't recommend is if you are considering putting a souring jar outside of your house, don't keep it by one of your doors, because near your door is where you want to influence the energy that you're wanting to bring into your house. So if you decide to put it outside, don't put it by one of your doors. And that's the most advice I have about that, because as I said, I just keep mine on my floor under my altar. And because I'm very in tune with protection and with purification, with cleansing, I do not feel that it affects anything negatively. And as long as you are following some kind of practice of that sort yourself, I don't think you will have a problem with it either. The energy is not going to just remain contained within your space. It's going to be going out into the world, into the universe, and affecting your target, affecting the energy surrounding your situation, and affecting what it needs to affect out in the world. Hi, Taxidermy Witch. Thank you for your kind words. Nice to see you here. The Taxidermy Witch is saying that she uses a dark, murky attic space and toilet spaces as well. So yeah, thank you for the addition of the dark, murky attic space. That would be another great example of a space that is energetically in alignment with the kind of magic that you are working in with a sour jar. So those are some things to take into consideration. Next question. How do you suggest caring for your gree-gree or mojo bags? So So I'm just going to address the question. I was thinking about some periphery things associated with that I might want to talk about, but I'm just going to talk to you about how to care for a mojo bag. The gree-gree is what's inside the mojo bag. The gree-gree are the goods that are inside the mojo bag, and then the mojo bag itself is the mojo. So caring for your mojo bag can be pretty simple, or you can get a little bit more complicated with it if you would like. It's really up to you, like most things in a magical practice. What I recommend is feeding your mojo bag at least once a month. What does feeding your bag mean? Feeding means to give it oil, to give it a few drops of whiskey, to pass it through some smoke, perhaps to sprinkle some cleansing waters on it. What you give it is going to depend upon what kind of mojo you have. For instance, if this was a mojo that's for spiritual purification or cleansing, that would be a case where you might want to use some cleansing water or some cleansing cologne on it. Oil you can use for any type of mojo bag. And if it's one of the mojo bags that is tied at the top and then has the fabric kind of bunching out, then you can just put a few drops of oil right in the top of that bag. And if it's not, if it's more like a drawstring cotton or flannel bag, then you can rub the oil on your hands and then hold the mojo in your hands. And focus on sending energy into it. Focus on reviving it. You can do that through chanting. You can do that through prayer. You can do that in whatever way works best for you, but send some energy into it. The point of feeding it is that you're sending energy into it. So with whatever you're feeding it, you are visualizing, or you are chanting, or you are verbalizing that you are sending energy into this bag. I also recommend at that time passing it through some smoke and then perhaps setting it up with a candle, maybe for like just one day. You do not have to do this. You can do this once a month. You can attune it to the moon cycle that works best for the intention associated with your mojo bag, or you can do this once a week. And that's going to depend on how intensive the work is. If this is something that you're working on very regularly all the time, if this is something that really needs a lot of energy directed at it right now, like if it's a difficult situation or a big challenge or a blockage you really need to work through, or if this is just something that you are wanting to consistently keep up with and remind yourself of or keep your intention for. Whiskey is a very traditional item that is used for feeding a mojo bag, and you can basically use whiskey for feeding any kind of mojo bag. Just a few drops, just a couple of drops on the bag or in the top of the bag is what I recommend. You don't want to get your bag all gross. You don't need to soak it in liquid. You don't need to use an excess of these ingredients with your mojo bag. Whiskey would be specifically related to power and conquering and those kinds of outer world, external kinds of energies in magic in general, but you can use it to add power to any type of mojo bag. So once a week, or once a month, you can get a little bit more involved with this or not. It's up to you. One more question before I move on to your live questions. For those of you who weren't here in the beginning of this session or maybe haven't participated in these sessions, our live spirit chats are a chance for you to participate in a group coaching session and get your questions answered regarding developing your spiritual path, developing your spiritual practice, and all kinds of things related and in between, including developing your spiritual connection, your psychic abilities, your intuition, etc. And I always take some early bird submissions. I take those early bird questions on Instagram, and I always address those early bird questions at the beginning of our session. And then when I'm finished with those, I answer your live questions. So hang tight, and I will get to those live questions shortly. And thank you for being here. One more early bird question. Oh, I just want to, I had some people asking about my health and asking how I'm feeling because I had surgery on Monday. And it went really well, and I'm feeling great. I'm doing good. And I really want to thank all of you who have been so supportive and who have asked about my health and asked about how I'm doing and how I'm feeling. I don't think I'm going to go into all of it right now, but if you haven't, I posted some kind of extensive information about the health stuff that I was going through on Instagram, and I posted some information about some healing work that I did for myself, some spiritual healing work that I did for myself with the help of the universe, with the help of spirit, of course. And I had some great success with that. And I had a very successful surgery, and I'm doing very well. And some of you have written me to thank me for standing in my truth and to thank me for sharing my story. And I really appreciate your support. And I really am happy that it has been inspiring to people. And I'm very happy that I was able to be vulnerable in this way. I think there's great strength in vulnerability, and I just appreciate all of your support. So thank you for asking about that. Okay, so I'm going to address a couple of questions on YouTube first because there's just a couple over there, and then I'm going to get to all of your Instagram questions. So, are mirrors used only under candles to amplify or reverse spell work, or can one keep a mirror on the altar to amplify any candle light spell energy? The answer is yes. You can use a mirror to amplify energy in general. You can use it to help you direct and send energy out into the world or where you want it to go. Or you can use a mirror to amplify energy. It's just going to depend on your intentions. There's lots of other ways that you can use mirrors as well. Something that I use and that I really like is mirrors in your window. I have a special mirror that my sister made for me in the window in this room, in my workspace, and that is for protection. It's for sending any unwanted energies away from this room. It's for protecting everything that goes on in this room. Mirror boxes are also very, very common and very, very effective, and that's for reversing spell work. So yeah, you can use mirrors all kinds of different ways, just depends on your intentions. For a long, long time on my altar, I had this same mirror I was just talking about set up behind the services that I was performing in order to amplify the energy and assist with directing it, assist with sending it out into the world. And that worked very, very well for me. So that's certainly something I would recommend. And then the taxidermy, which was just following up on the conversation we were having about mojos. And she was saying, can't you also feed the mojo with bodily fluids as well? She says, many of my books suggest that, and I've had great results. And also she's talking about connecting it with DNA. So I would consider that, just from my personal perspective, I would consider that an ingredient you would include in the gree-gree. That would be an ingredient you would include in the Mojo Bag in the first place. If you wanted to connect your DNA to it, I highly recommend that. That's very traditional. It's very powerful. It's going to add a lot of power and personal connection to your Mojo Bag, but I wouldn't consider it to be a specific technique for feeding the Mojo Bag. When I was talking about feeding the Mojo Bag, I'm talking about the practice of continuing to extend the power of the Mojo Bag over time, or reviving the power of the Mojo Bag over time. So you could continue to feed it with more bodily fluids, but I wouldn't necessarily say that that is essential. And from my perspective, obviously I'm open to whatever works for anyone else, but from my perspective, I wouldn't recommend it, because when you're feeding the Mojo Bag, it's like you're feeding a spirit. And I wouldn't offer a spirit my blood or my bodily fluids, because you don't want spiritual energy to get attached to feeding off of you. So I would include that DNA, those personal effects or DNA in the bag in the first place, and then I would use other ingredients to feed it. You're welcome. I'm glad it's helpful information, and let me know if you have any follow-up questions. All right, let's see. There's quite a few folks here on Instagram, and I think I've got a few questions over here. So let's see what's going on. Oh, thank you, JC Moji. You're sweet. Thank you. Okay, someone is saying, I'm looking for a job online. I need something. I'm in situations right now. What are you doing? This my first time. I don't understand. Okay, well, maybe you understand now because I've been explaining what I'm doing. So let me know if you have any follow-up questions to that. Let's see. What's your opinion on the full moon in Scorpio? The full moon on Scorpio is very much about healing. It's very much about dark goddess energy. I've posted a ton about this, so you can also go back and look on my Instagram feed. But it's about the darkness. It's about shadow work. It's about what's hidden within us. It's about old pain, old trauma. It's about our pain bodies. It's about things that need to be unearthed and healed. It's about breaking through blockages. It's about releasing the old. It's about working with dark goddess energy in a productive, proactive way. It's about doing our shadow work. And things of that nature. It's about the feminine, the unknown. It's about mysteries. It's about sexuality, all kinds of things of that nature. So a lot about healing and releasing blockages, and a lot about breaking through obstacles within ourselves, especially related to old traumas and old pain, especially related to our sexuality and our femininity, and finding ways to transmute and transform that energy to move forward. And for this full moon in Scorpio, I have been working with Joan of Arc on behalf of my Patreons, on behalf of my group service members and my monthly subscription members. And I've been working for all those things that I just spoke of with Joan of Arc, and in conjunction with this Scorpio energy. Let me know if you have follow-up questions about that. Hello, I hope all is well. Blessings too. I'm a beginner, which is I'm hesitant to do spells. Any advice? Yes, my advice is that you have to learn by doing. I feel like a lot of people put too much emphasis on study. Okay, study is important. Research is important. Get your foundations down. Keep learning, and accept the fact that you are always going to need to be learning if you're going to be on this path. Okay, learning is definitely important, but just as important, if not more important sometimes, is that you have to learn by doing. So don't be afraid. You've got to practice your spells. And a lot of people are afraid because they think that a spell is going to backfire, or that it's going to have negative results, or that it's going to bring bad karma. I don't believe that. A lot of people don't believe that. In my practices, we don't believe that. The worst thing that can happen is that your spell won't work. And then you just keep practicing and you figure out how to make it work. Keep notes. I recommend that you keep a journal for your spell work or your spiritual work specifically. And when you get, make a note of the spells that you practice, the ingredients that you use, the methods you used, how you did it, what moon phase you did it, things like that. And then when you have a spell that's really effective and that does work, you can look back at those notes and say, okay, I got this one to work. And then you can start to replicate those results in your future spells. And that's how you learn. Thank you. I'm glad. Thank you for the well wishes, everyone, and for the comments about my health. I really appreciate it. I got a piece of vervain stem. How do I use it? I'm actually not sure. I'm not vervain. I'm not sure. I'm not super familiar with that herb. That's not one that's in my immediate repertoire. maybe if you give me a little bit more information about it, or you could use the doctrine of signs in order to ascertain how to use it. And if you aren't sure what the doctrine of signs are, look that up. That will be really helpful information for you in ascertaining how to use different plants. I just started reaching it. My friend dreamed her grandmother told her to get it. Very interesting. Well, then I would ask your friend what she was working on, or what intentions she was trying to set, or what goals she was trying to accomplish when she had that dream about her grandmother, because it sounds to me as if that dream is specific to her and to her grandmother, and she was probably trying to get an answer to some kind of challenge or problem in her life, or there's something specific that she needs to work on, and that's what the vervain is for. So consult with your friend and find out a little bit more about that. Who are my teachers in root work and hoodoo? So I'm not a traditional root worker, and I'm not a traditional hoodoo practitioner. I practice folk magic, and I've had a lot of teachers throughout my life. I was in a coven for 15 years. I was in a coven with Sarah from Conjured Cardia, and I've been practicing all of my life. I've been in quite a few different traditions. Can I ask you questions in private? I need you to open up my heart. I don't trust anybody but you for some reason. You can email me inquiries@missmelinda.com, and we can assess if you need a reading, or if you need a guidance session, or if you just have some very simple, basic questions, I can answer them in an email. But for anything more in depth, like opening up your heart, we may need to set up a session. Go ahead, please email inquiries@missmelinda.com. Oh, thank you, Linda's daughter. I'm so glad that you're enjoying the session. What should a witch have in her own for protection? I'm a beginner witch. You should have in your home, you can use anything that works for you and that resonates with you in your home for protection. The thing is, for me, I don't recommend that we rely too much on objects or talismans or charms, talismans, I should have said, or charms for these kinds of things. I recommend that we rely on our own energetic field, as well as our connection with spirit, or our connection to the universe for protection. So the first thing that I recommend is setting up a strong relationship with your ancestors and asking them for protection. But really, this needs to be personal to you. This needs to be what works best for you. So if you're just working with universal energy, or pure universal energy, or your connection to the universe, then ask the universe for protection. If you're working with dedicating yourself to a certain god or goddess or a patroness, then ask them for protection. If you're learning how to do energy work, which if you are a beginner witch, you should learn how to do energy work, learn how to work with your own energy, learn how to use energy and raise power, things of that nature, then you can use your own energetic field for protection. And that is something I strongly, very highly recommend, is that you learn how to energetically protect yourself. So the taxidermy witch says, bless you for that last bit. That keeps me clear of many energies I may not want. You're welcome. I'm glad that you find the information helpful. Linda's daughter wants to know, how do I connect with my ancestors? So this is a broad topic, and I've talked about it a lot in these live spirit chats. So you can go back and look at my YouTube channel, where I have archived all of these live spirit chats. I've talked a lot about ancestor work and given a lot of advice about it. But for the purposes of this question today, I'll give you some very brief foundational information. One very important detail that many people wonder about: you do not have to connect with specific ancestors in the beginning. If you don't know them, or you don't want to, or you aren't sure who to connect with, you do not have to focus on a specific relationship with any specific ancestor. Instead, you can start honoring them as a whole, as a group. On the other hand, if you have an ancestor that you have always felt very close to or drawn to, you can start by honoring that individual that you feel a connection with. Keep in mind, if they have not been deceased for very long, then they may not be very spiritually elevated. So do not expect from them a lot of other things other than what you would have expected from them in life. If they were a mechanic or a hairdresser, then they're going to help you with things that they knew about, like cars and hair. You get the point. If they were somebody who was interested in tarot cards and magic and spiritual evolution while they were alive, then they're going to be able to help you with that in death. But if they haven't been dead for very long, then don't expect a ton out of them in the way of assisting you other than the kind of advice or guidance or interactions that they would have given you in life. So if you're seeking more of a kind of assistance with spiritual evolution and spiritual growth and spiritual protection and things of that nature, then I recommend that you begin to honor your ancestors as a whole until you develop a relationship with ancestors who have passed on long, long ago and are spiritually evolved and are on their own spiritual journey at this point. So the way to do it is to set up a space, and it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be very simple. And I recommend from my tradition that it is all white. It can even be a corner of the room on the floor. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. You can put down a white handkerchief. You can put down a small white cloth, one glass of water, one white candle. No big deal. Change the water every day. Go to them and start offering them prayers of honor. Start offering them prayers of gratitude. Do not ask them for anything. Simply begin to honor them and thank them for all they did before you and all they will continue to do. Thank you for the roads that they traveled before you, for the blockages they removed before you got here, for the battles that they won, for the things that they had to endure. Thank you for everything that they have passed on to you, all of the unique characteristics and traits and strengths and wisdom, everything that they've passed to you and everything that they've done before you. Simply offer them gratitude either every day or at least once a week, but you have to make a commitment to it and you have to be consistent with it. Do not give them a bunch of food offerings. Do not give them a bunch of elaborate offerings. You need to work on this relationship until you recognize that you are making communication with an ancestor spirit, and it proves that it really is an ancestor spirit, because there are other spirits that may show up and claim to be an ancestor and may not actually be an ancestor. So you have to take your time to get to know them the same way that you would get to know a new person in your life. You have to take the time to get to know that energy, get to know what kind of energy they're bringing into your life and bringing to you before you fully trust them. So some people work on this relationship for up to a year or more before it begins to develop to another phase. And this is dedication. This is not instant gratification. This is something that we consistently work with, and that we do not expect specific results from. This is something where we take pleasure in the process. It is the dedication. It is the reverence. It is the act, which is bringing us the spiritual fulfillment that we seek. This is not something where we want to go and ask for things for ourselves and then expect immediate results and get instant gratification and be fulfilled in that way. It is within the spiritual practice that we gain our fulfillment. It is how this practice helps to develop and shape us, the patience that it instills within us, the ability that it instills within us to connect to energy, the things, the way that it shapes us as people, and the way that it helps us to learn what spiritual practice is all about. That is what we get out of this. That is what we enjoy out of this. So that's some basic information about building a relationship with your ancestors. Over time, with dedication and with consistency, there may be some specific ancestors that make themselves known to you, that you can then begin to develop specific individual relationships with them. You can certainly talk to them about your life and talk to them about your problems, but you should not be asking them specifically for anything. I do not sell these necklaces. Thank you for the compliment. This is Tiger's Eye, and this is Rose Quartz. You're welcome, Linda's daughter. I'm glad that the answers were helpful to you. I hope that gives you a foundation and some information about working with ancestors. Like I said, go back and look over my YouTube archive because there's a lot of info there about working with ancestors. I've talked about it extensively, particularly in all of the live chats. I haven't made any videos specifically about working with ancestors, even though it's on my list. It's on my very long list of kinds of videos to make, but I've talked about it a lot in the live chats, and most of those live chats are saved in my YouTube archives, open to the public. So take a look. I hope it's helpful for you. Good evening, Janelle. Okay, so we've been on about 55 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and log off. Thank you so much to everybody who joined today, and thank you so kindly to everybody who submitted early bird questions. I really appreciate all of your support. I appreciate all of your questions. I really enjoy the conversation. I enjoy answering your questions, and I enjoy interacting with you. And I'm sending love and healing to all of you. And I want you to stay blessed and be well. Have a great Sunday. Goodbye. I'm Miss Melinda's Metaphysical Services on YouTube. Bye, everyone. Thanks so much. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much. Stay blessed.